Okay, this talk's going to be about the Nazi plan to nuke New York City. Now, the Nazis had a code name for this. This was going to be the V3. If you'll remember, the V1 was a pilotless bomber. A pilotless drone that carried a 1,000-pound warhead, but it could be shot down. The V2 rocket was basically the first thing that left the Earth's atmosphere, and it also carried a 1,000-pound payload, but it couldn't be intercepted. It just came down, and you couldn't stop it. So this was the V3. Now, what was the V3? The V3 was the Horton 229. It was if any of you, which I'm sure pretty much everybody has seen, the very first Indiana Jones. Remember when they get the Ark of the Covenant and they load it on a weird looking German aircraft that's shaped like a wing with the propellers in the back? Well, this was a jet version of the flying wing. Now, after they captured some of them in Germany, they took one to the Smithsonian, and some guys from the Skunk Works looked at it and realized the radar evading property of it, and that was the direct idea they got for the B1, or the B2 Spirit, and all the stealth aircraft subsequently. Now I'm going to show you some pictures that are real rare here. So this was the Draeger pressure suit designed for the Horton. Now remember, this Horton could fly 653 miles an hour, and it had a 49,500 foot ceiling. And here's another version, an earlier version of the Draeger hard suit circa 1940. And so anyway, they'd been working on it. This is the model for the 229 that was the final model. And here's a picture of it. The man in the pressurized suit. It was basically a spacesuit is what it was. So here he is in the cockpit of a Horton 229. And I got another picture. This is what the Horton looked like after they cut it up. They found it in a farmhouse, and they also found some on production lines. Well, they destroyed those because they thought the Soviets were going to get them. But they cut the one up and they took it to the Air and Space Museum. And then here's also some earlier Nazi pressure suits, and this is the one circa 1936, because they were planning on super high altitude bombers. And so the Nazis were working on an atomic bomb. Now this is U.S. and English soldiers dismantling the German experimental nuclear pile at Haigerloch in April of '45. Now, the Germans were obviously not as advanced as the Americans in the nuclear program, obviously, but they were ahead of the Japanese, and the Soviets found some of this, some of their nuclear. They had another site that the Soviets got a hold of that wasn't as advanced as this site, by the way. It's talking about here that the German resources jump-started the Soviet program, and that parallels a lot what happened in North Korea. The Japanese had a nuclear bomb program also on the Korean Peninsula. They dammed up 3 rivers. One of them was the Chosin River by the reservoir. And so the North Koreans dug it up, and that's how they jump-started their nuclear bomb. Now, the Chinese never gave any of the secrets to them. They just did that on their own. And so what was all about this Horton? So how could that have changed the war? Well, they didn't have a nuclear bomb per se, but what they were planning on doing was dropping this bomb with radioactive material right over Grand Central Station. And a little known fact at the time, basically every troop and the Army went through Grand Central Station. They really watched at the time for guys with buckets of sand, because there was power, there was generators underneath Grand Central Station, and if you would have taken 2 buckets of sand, you could have basically destroyed the generators by dumping the sand in there and gumming up the works, and it would have knocked out the people traveling for several weeks. And the man that kind of had the idea to drop this dirty bomb, basically, remember, it was a dirty bomb, not a true nuclear bomb, on New York, was a man named Gundren. Now, Gundren was actually a Panzer commander, and he was a very one of the great tank commanders of all time, Heinz William Gundren. He wrote 7 books about battles and everything, and he was the one that did the breakout, the Battle of Sedan, and he was the one. This is France, and he was the one that made France collapse so fast. He was the point of the spear there, and anyway, there's his battle map. And so anyway, he had been in World War I. He had been a corpsman in Verdun, and although the Germans planned to take Verdun, the French, although they kept it, they were pretty much bled dry. They lost so many people, so it was a Pyrrhic victory. And he saw what happened in World War I, that although you could beat the French, the Russians, and the British, you've got basically unlimited supply of people on the American side. So he was the one that actually came up with the idea to drop it on Grand Central Station. Now, there wasn't much known about radiation poisoning at the time. Madame Curie obviously died of it, and there was some kind of famous radium poisoning people that died. Here's an ad for a cosmetic beauty enhancer made out of thorium. I'll get you to check that out, real cool. And then here's a postcard from a radium bath that will improve your health. So they thought that back then they thought that radium would help your health. They didn't understand that it would just all radiation does is destroy cells. But anyway, so the plan was drop this nuclear irradiate New York City. And remember, even though the blast wouldn't have been that big, it would have thrown the stuff over several hundred square yards. Remember when Fukushima happened? People found plutonium and radiation all over Tokyo simply because the emergency workers got it in their shoes and tracked it into Tokyo. If you want to see something weird, punch in Tokyo playground radiation, and you'll see that they just at the bottom, just walking around in it, got radiation all over Tokyo. I imagine a little bit got on the outskirts from the actual explosion. But anyway, so this Horton could go 653 miles an hour, and it would go at 49,500 feet ceiling, hence the need for these spacesuits here. And these suits were also used in the 2 German flying saucer concepts, the Iron Bell, and I'm not going to even pronounce this right, the Hanubab flying saucer. They basically had 2 basic flying saucers. If you want to check that out, I'm going to do a video on it. And then, like I said, they were going to drop a dirty bomb on New York City. And here's a copy of a letter from Albert Einstein to FDR, and he's talking about how uranium could be used. I'll try to do this slow so you can read it and freeze it. And then here's page 2, and he's talking about how the ores are bad and how we need to get ready because Germany is the enemy. And then there's these. signature. So the Allies were lucky. If this would have been put out, if this would have been completed maybe 3 months sooner, might have been a little bit different outcome. Don't think the Germans would have won the war, but they might have actually had a stalemate. And here's some other stuff I got up since I've so lead, you know, lead's the only thing that can really save you from exposure to that. And here's just something I had that's kind of interesting. It's a stock for a Vanadium Corporation. Oh, here's my cat. This is Field Marshal Rommel. He's helping me here film this. And here's some notes. A copy of the notes from Mendeleev, the man that designed the periodic table. And like I said, here's some hardly ever seen pictures of the Horton and the spacesuit that they had. They're actually working on making an actual working copy of the Horton. Now this is going to be just a model flying around, but it'll give you a little taste of the flavor of what it would look like in flight. This is a man-made a model, remote controlled model, but they're actually working on making a full-size model of it. I mean, not a model, but an actual plane. Yeah, this is the Vengeance 3 weapon, and I'll come out with the pseudo. It was never designated V4, but the 2 flying saucer concept items they had, the German Flying Bell and the Hunaba, which actually took down a couple of American planes when they hit the last German base that was actually down in Antarctica, a place they called New Schwabodenland. Anyway, thank you. I'm out.